Yes, I must say the flavour's much better when they're alive, the little dog said after he burped. Rather than letting me reply, the supernatural being carried on talking. Humans are quite the tasty lot, you know. You should give them a go one day. That sedentary lifestyle of theirs leaves the flesh all rather plump and tender. There's no need to put a human in a box and force feed them until they're ripe for slaughter. Most of them already pretty much do the work themselves. Absolute genius, so much so that I wonder sometimes whether it was me who created your species, or if it actually was just chemical chance. I looked at the little dog blankly. I'd only just started to process what had just happened. I could just try to remember that fact, but you know, when you have existed in an infinite amount of universes and an infinite amount of dimensions of eternity, memories about such a small speck of dust like your race take a little extra mental steam to work the cocks. Something I admittedly can't be bothered to do. I was still frozen with confusion and indecision. It wasn't because I was scared, as quite frankly I was. It was more that I hadn't the foggiest idea what to do. I would have grasped at straws, but my brain didn't have any for me to grasp. Also, the constant yammering from a canine didn't help. The little dog answered another imaginary question I had no intention of asking or interest in. Yes, I could go wild and have a little party by eating 1 billion of 2 of your kind, but I think that would become far too much of a good thing, and I would become bored of such lovely flavours. I must remember to be patient and savour each morsel. The little dog paused for a few seconds. Did you know that when humans are eaten alive, adrenaline and cortisol brings out an aromatic flavour of the meat? Just a pinch, really, just enhance the taste to a level that's so much better than snacking on regular rotting corpses. Oh, I must say, you're looking a little peaky there, my dear chap. I turned my head and looked the critter in the eyes. This time, the little dog answered a question that I had wanted to ask. If it makes you feel any better, I don't play with my food. I don't see the point at all in doing all that torture business. I won't lie, I tried it once with a particularly aggravating planet-sized fleshy monster thing. The most grotesque thing you would have ever seen in your life. The bloody thing kept offering me sacrifices and prayers. What's wrong with that, you might think? But it wasn't just for 1 or 2. It was millions near every bloody day. I couldn't get anything done as my focus was constantly drawn away. The critter let out a sigh before speaking again. At the time, I was trying to watch the most delightful Zoskov robot assassin that had gone rogue against his programming, but I simply couldn't pay it any attention to that idiot constantly babbling on about how amazing I was. So naturally, I vented my grievances on the planet-sized buffoon. The canine interrupted itself to scratch behind its ears. I did some of the most heinous and painful things to it for at least 1,000 years, but it didn't take long for me to realise it was incredibly time-consuming and a dull activity. Also, I ended up missing out on watching the Zoskov's assassins laser an explosion-filled death. The amount of moaning and whining that comes from torture as well is just absolutely unbearable. From that point, I became an absolute believer in the idea that if anything is that frustrating, then just eat it and be done with it. The horrifying Crittalen winked. I felt somewhat better after hearing that as one on a long list of points of concerns that had been furiously written onto my mind. If I was going to cross this beast, then at least the very worst would be that it would just eat me. That being said, the taste of whatever I've eaten will influence how long it is digested for. That pathetic sycophant I just told you about, well, it had the most delightfully meaty textures and rustic flavours, so I digested the old fellow over a good 1,000,000 years. If you remember what I said before, the more alive the food, the better it tastes. So for it had been torn asunder, my digestive tract had this amazing ability of keeping my food quite alive and quite in pain, till it's all been fully dissolved at the molecular level. An evil grin erupted on the ghastly beast's face as it looked at me. My concern was immediately written back onto my list. Ho, ho, but do not worry, young man. You're probably much too stringy and tough. Too much exercise, just far too much. Also, it's not my plan to eat you, as far as you entertain. I don't want you to become bored because you're constantly worried about being consumed by me. I want you to be able to be you. Anyway, we must get going. As they say, the show must go on. The little dog laughed out whilst wagging his tail and jumping in the air. This was not a position I was used to. It is an impossibility to prepare oneself for such events, as such events would never happen. There were many choices in the matter, but regardless of what the little dog said, there was a strong possibility that almost all of them would lead to me being eaten. Death wasn't such an ordeal, but being slowly digested alive over eons admittedly frightened the hell out of me. A part of me tried to comfort me with the thought that I would probably get used to the intense pain, but that wasn't a prospect I was willing to try out. It was clear that the waters were furiously heading in one direction, and I simply could not swim against such currents. "What do I call you, little dog?" I asked reluctantly after I let out a heavy sigh.
My name is so complex that it would take your primitive brain 5 billion years of processing to even comprehend the first syllable, so it's probably best to just call me Little Dog. Yes, it has a cute ring to it. Don't worry, I know what your real name is, although it really doesn't suit you, so I'll call you Cain.
The little dog then ran around me, barking happily. The beast then jumped against my leg with his tail wagging. This time I felt the critter. My hand became thoroughly licked when I gingerly moved it closer to inspect the thing. Oddly to me, there was no difference to any other dog I'd touched before. "Fine, call me that. I don't care," I muttered. I thought that although the critter was clearly quite powerful from what I'd seen, it didn't mean it was as powerful as it claimed to be. Also, the creature's quite petulant and arrogant, so there were hopefully weaknesses to discover. "What about the CCTV that would have picked up all this fighting?" I asked.
The deal is the deal. I wouldn't worry about such silly things.
I was just about to open the door, but the little dog interrupted.
Hold on 1 second.
The critter quickly teleported to various different spots in the courtroom, and split second after split second, all the while looking at me, then reappeared right in front of my face.
I felt like there was something missing in that fun little hoo-ha you just had, and I think it's because I'm not a fan of this new look that they forced on you. Okay, look over there, my dear man, and you'll see a little present.
I saw my tattered trench coat and fusty clothes neatly folded on one of the public gallery's chair. Underneath these were my rustic and well-worn boots. I raised an eyebrow, as clearly there were some perks to this newfound and twisted relationship. I went over and picked up my trench coat and shoved it into my face. The stale cabbage and leather smell was still there. I looked over to see how it was doing. There were some new blood stains noticeable on the inner lining. These were probably from a bus hitting me, but aside from all that, it all seemed relatively intact. I could not help but show that I was ecstatic, as it felt like a little part of me had come home. I smothered my face more into my clothing again for a good few minutes until I realized that a malicious supernatural being was waiting for me. As soon as I pulled my face away from my coat, I noticed my neck and my face being tickled.
Sorry, my good chap, but your new hair is without the varied wildlife that it had before. I'm sure it won't take long for you to get a new habitat up and running in there.
I lightly stroked my hair, and it felt off too, and it wasn't as greasy as before, but it still felt heavenly having the length again. "Thank you, little dog," I mumbled out to it. I quickly ripped off my blood-stained overalls and almost jumped right into my clothes. Whilst I was getting changed, a tentacle suddenly appeared and spat some sort of acid onto the clothes I'd just discarded.
Much better. We don't want you hurting and killing him with fashion faux pas like how on before.
Before we get going, little dog, I must say that I have seen the most fantastic happenings when it comes to your abilities. Please don't take this as rudeness, but one cannot help but be curious. The intrigue is not about your proven capabilities, but more about where it ends. I do apologize if this offends you, but could you actually show me the true extent of your power? I politely asked.
Well, young man, you just have to have faith. Ha I'm just being silly. I could give you a quick demonstration, yes. But then again, a skeptical and adept mind might still assume that some trickery is afoot. You just wouldn't know it, what I showed you is actual reality or not. Especially as you don't have the instruments to adequately test what I could show you. For I could simply be more technologically advanced species that appears as powerful due to how primitive you humans are. Also, I am afraid that the human brain's computational power is far too small to produce a relevant deduction. You try explaining the notion's power, demonstrate your capabilities to an ant and see how far you get. But if you still wish to be bamboozled by such levels of energy and truth, I'm more than happy to show you, and indeed tell you my real name.
I frowned in response. Little dog was quite right, for a more powerful and technologically advanced creature really wouldn't be exceptionally difficult to make it appear that it was godlike to humans. Hell, it was even quite easy for humans to trick other humans in such outlandish notions without any demonstrations of actual power. The numerous churches that have popped up over the past few thousand years was testament to this. Essentially, all that I would be able to deduce was that the creature was still far more powerful than I was. I wouldn't know what the extent of this power was. There probably wasn't any point in asking the canine to go through whatever demonstration I had in mind. Then again, I thought it might help me identify a potential weakness. Okay, little dog, show me. It was what felt like a second later when I came to and found myself on all fours on the ground, profusely vomiting. My vision was warped and fuzzy, my ears rang loudly, and all I could vocalize was gurgles. Every neuron was jumbled up together in tight, tangled knots, and the sensory information crashed into them like angry wave after angry wave. It was as if I had just been born into a world and a body which I no longer understood. I could not tell how long it took, but eventually the nausea, the feelings of absolute chaos, my senses settled to a point where I was able to realize I was still in the courtroom, and that little dog was sitting on a nearby chair, lolling on its back.
I'm afraid, my dear chap, your noggin couldn't quite process everything you've just experienced. Far too much sensory information for you to handle. I did tell you my name, but about point you were frothing out the mouth, your eyes rolled back, and you were babbling like a little child. I suppose it's quite inconvenient. I can't remember a single thing, and I imagine it didn't do much to convince you. I suppose all you need to know is that I'm substantially more powerful than any person on this planet. Keep that picture in mind, and I think you'll just do marvellous.
When my brain solidified a bit more, I tried to remember what had just happened. Suddenly, I started to feel an intense sense of vertigo as all the colours around me warped again, and I was sucked back down into a bottomless void. I could feel my body retching and trying to vomit as it thought that was the answer to my current woes.
Yes, probably best not to think back to what just happened. Sure, you survived. I had to compress your memory of the experience's small size. Enough like your brain could store it. Don't worry, it's in a file so small that it won't hinder any of your cognitive abilities or brain systems. However, the issue, my dear chap, is that you simply can't access it. As if you tried, it might explode. If you don't believe me, you might want to give your eyes a wipe.
As I wasn't in any state to disagree, I complied. I looked at my hand, and it was red with blood.
When you're bleeding from the eyes, it's safe to assume that whatever you're doing, it probably isn't going to end well. Now do you believe me?
If you can so easily compress it to such a small size, why don't you just delete the memory? I rasped out.
Ha! That would be far too much interference in your reality, and I must confess, it sounded like quite a funny thing to do. It'll certainly keep you on your toes, you know, the ever looming prospect that your head might explode.
I stared right back at the supernatural being, and I was glad to notice I had healed to a stage where I could feel rage again. Thoughts of murder were abundant, but it's clear that such feelings were all talk in my mind and no action. Suddenly the little dog appeared like it was trying to look sheepish, but was getting the attempt quite wrong. It looked down and seemed to pine, and then it looked up with big, beautiful, wide eyes, accompanied the most blood-curdling and bass-ridden growl that I'd ever heard. The sound of it echoed throughout the courtroom and my head. A second later, the critter gave a whine and followed that with an ear-to-ear smile.
I know it's quite an inconvenient time to ask such a silly favour, but I can assure you that we won't be interrupted. You'd think that being this powerful I wouldn't even hesitate, yet here I am rambling off away from what I want to ask you. Anyhow, I've seen what I want being done to many a natural dog. I want someone to do this to me, as it looks quite jolly good fun. So without further delay, my good man, if you'd be so kind, please would you rub my belly?
What?
Yes, you heard me correctly, my dear chap. As strange as it sounds, it's something I must give a go at least once. Canines make it look so delightfully entertaining, and as you little people say, when in Rome.
I looked at little dog apprehensively, but couldn't quite come to terms with the fact that something so powerful wanted me to actually treat it like a dog.
Oh, please be a good sport, Cain.
It implored with a grin on its face. I sighed and walked forward, as it seemed I didn't have a choice in the matter. I went to touch a canine's belly, tentatively, as the first time I saw contact with the little dog my fist went right through it. This time I felt fur and bodily warmth was identical to every other dog I had touched.
Oh, bloody hell. Oh, bloody hell. That certainly is really good. Marvellous, my dear chap. Marvellous. Oh, yes.
I quickly swung at the critter with my free hand as I thought it was worth a try. My fist went right through its head like before, even while my other hand was still rubbing its belly and the canine was still moaning with excitement. I then tried squeezing my hand around its belly as hard as I could, but it made no impact at all. The beast actually panted even harder.
Okay, that's enough. If you do any more, you might end up proposing to me.
The critter shot up and skipped towards the courtroom doors.
Come on, young man, let's go and do what you do best.
It sung out. The doors of a court swung open as the little dog approached them. I let out a heavy sigh and followed out the room. We both walked down the stairs and pathways off the Crown Court in silence. There wasn't a soul in sight until we reached the entrance. There stood two overweight middle-aged private security guards idly waiting. They didn't appear to have heard or know anything about what had just happened up above. Rather than give them a chance to notice me, I sprinted up and gave one of them a jumping punch straight on his chin. He went straight to the ground with a loud exhalation of hair. What? Was what I heard as I did a backhand like a tennis player with my fist on the side of the other guard's chin. He went stumbling a few feet to the side before he hit the ground and rolled. I turned around to ask the little dog a question, but stopped when I saw the left leg of the other guard sticking out of its mouth. That answered my query. The leg then sucked in as if it was a piece of spaghetti. I raised an eyebrow, and as I turned around, I heard loud crunches of snapping bone.
I know I keep banging on about this, but really, you humans are such a tasty lot. If you get a good one, the meat is so eloquently marbled with layers of luxurious fats.
The canine teased. I ignored the comment and walked through the building's revolving entrance doors. I was back in city life where streams of people flowed by. There was no mass panic, no screams or shouts, just as if the usual rat race was in progress and the usual aversion of people's gaze from what they perceived to be a homeless man and his dog. I thought there was going to be at least some press outside, little dog.
Well, apparently one of his species' most famous of celebrities has conveniently had his soft drink spiked with MDMA, GHB, methamphetamine, LSD, diazepam, a large dose of Viagra. He is currently naked, quite observably aroused, and grazing on the grass of Piccadilly Gardens. They have all rushed over to cover the story.
I responded with a wry smile. My stomach took advantage of the silence that followed with a whine and a rumble. Are you going to magic me a little bit of money? I'm quite peckish, you see, I asked.
I'm afraid not, young chap. That isn't part of the deal.
All right, Len. You'd think your eating antics would have put me off food, so first things first, I've got to get to work, little dog. Obviously, you're welcome to watch. The canine gave a jolly bark in response.